Hello, my name is Sarah Lloyd and I look after the learning team at the Museum of Natural History in Oxford. And in this session, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the museum and give you some ideas to talk about. So this is a picture of the museum. The museum is a public-facing part of the University of Oxford, and it's home to around 7 million specimens. When you Google the museum, you see lots of pictures of dinosaurs, and that's certainly an important part of our collection. But we've also got lots of insects. We've got around 5 million creepy crawlies of one sort or another. The collection is one part, but we also are home to a research team, and there's some really exciting research that happens in the museum. These are two of our researchers. Ricardo looks at life from 40 million years ago, trapped in amber, and Lauren looks at the evolution of invertebrate vision. The specimens, though, are a really important part, and in this session I'm going to talk about the insects. There are over 5 million insects in the collection at the museum, and the collection is really diverse, but all of these are insects and they all share key features. This is a scorpion fly, and it shows the characteristic features of insects. All insects have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. In the head, there are sense organs and the apparatus for feeding. In the thorax, in the midsection, there are all the organs needed for movement, and in the abdomen are organs needed for reproduction and the digestion of food. So insects all share these key features. But insects are diverse and can be categorized into groups known as orders. And there are 4 key orders. These are by far the biggest orders in the insect group. You have the butterflies and moths, or the Lepidoptera. You have the flies, or Diptera, and the ants, bees and wasps, the Hymenoptera, and the beetles, or Coleoptera. These are the 4 main orders of insects. And in our collection, we have insects that have been collected for over 200 years. So one of the parts of the insect collection in the museum is the Hope collection, and this is a collection of more than 1 million British insects, and they're particularly important for understanding how populations have changed over time. There's a really familiar story that you've probably heard several times about the peppered moth. The peppered moth comes in a variety of forms, and over the course of the Industrial Revolution, the peppered moth varieties changed from the most common pale variety before the Industrial Revolution to the dark variety after the Industrial Revolution. And this is linked to human activity. And it's often taught as an example of evolution in action. It's a simple, observable change over a short period of time, controlled by a single gene. So it's commonly taught at GCSE, and that's one you've probably heard of before. But by studying insect populations and having a collection to reference them against, you can see that insect populations are dynamic. And the story generally isn't positive. Have a look at these headlines that have been collected recently. They're all looking at insect stories, and if you try to guess some of the missing words, you'll see that the news isn't particularly positive. Have a look, see if you can work out. And here are the missing words. So insects are in trouble. Should we be worried by that? We clearly should be, but it isn't all bad news. There are some insect success stories. Here is one of my favourites. This is the large blue butterfly, and it's the largest and rarest of our blue butterflies, and it's very distinctive. It's got these very distinctive markings on its underwings, and it's a butterfly that was extinct in the UK. In 1979, it was declared extinct, but has been successfully reintroduced. Reintroduction wasn't simple because we needed to understand its ecosystem. The large blue butterfly has a really interesting life cycle. It spends most of the year underground as a caterpillar living with ants, and is protected by the ants. And that's because the ants think the baby caterpillar is a baby ant. But actually the caterpillar is eating baby ants here. So those are the baby ants you can see being eaten by the caterpillar. And the ants are protecting the caterpillar because the caterpillar smells like a baby ant and sounds like a baby ant. In fact, there's only one ant that knows it's not a baby ant, and that's the queen. But as long as the caterpillar avoids the queen, it's protected by the ants in the nest. But it wasn't until we understood that life cycle, we were able to reintroduce the large blue butterfly into areas of the UK. And now it's established itself back and is no longer declared extinct in the UK. So that's a success story. The tree bumblebee is another success story in the UK. It is common, its name describes where you might find it. It makes its nests in the holes in trees. And it was new to the UK in 2001. So it was first recorded in Wiltshire in 2001, and then in the next few years it became established, and since 2007 its range and abundance have increased massively, and now it's common in the UK. But if you look at museum collections that are older than 2001, this is a tray of bees. There are over 260 different kinds of bees in the UK, and this is a collection collected before 2001, and it doesn't include the tree bumblebee. So by looking at museum collections, you can see the changes, and some of those changes, it's not all doom and gloom. There are some success stories, some insects that are becoming well established and insects that have returned from extinction. But on the whole, the picture isn't as positive as these two examples might suggest. The great yellow bumblebee was once widespread throughout Great Britain, and it's now only found in 5 known population centres, and they're predominantly in the north of Scotland. They need very particular habitats. They need extensive meadow to survive year to year, and where those habitats have been lost, this bee has disappeared. So it's confined to a very small area, and this decline is true for most insect species in the UK. Why should we be worried by that? Well, insects are useful to us. They pollinate our food crops. They're important in the environment. They pollinate wildflowers. They provide food for other organisms. They remove dead and waste material, and they keep other species in check. Insects are also probably an indicator of a bigger problem in terms of biodiversity. They're probably the canary in the cage, and that loss of biodiversity will impact us in lots of different ways in years to come. So what can we do? I think the best solution is to try and understand why. Well, let's think about human activity over recent years. What have humans done that has led to this decline in insects? Well, these pictures show some of the things that might be a part of the story. Our population is increasing, and we use land in different ways. Habitat has been lost. We farm intensively. We use pesticides, and the carbon footprint of the way we live is such that it exacerbates climate change. And climate change, particularly the occurrence of extreme weather events, has a dramatic impact on insect populations. So many of these pictures you can see here are linked to the choices we make, and particularly with the way we produce our food. With a growing population and producing food in more intensive ways, and the carbon footprint of our food, that they all exacerbate the problem. So let's think about food more carefully. By thinking about food more carefully, we might come up with some solutions, particularly not just the way we produce our food, but the amount of food we waste. Incredible 4.5 million tonnes of food each year is wasted in UK households. So let's think about food in more detail. Well, we're on an insect theme, and insects could be a solution to the problem. So in this part, I'm going to talk about this picture. How do you feel about eating insects? Personally, if it doesn't look like an insect, okay, but this picture on the right-hand side here with these very long legs, I find quite disturbing. But let's think about insect food, because insects provide us with lots and lots of solutions. So I'm going to take a little break in this next part, and in the break I'd like you to do a little bit of research about insects as food, the positives and negatives of having a diet based on insects, where insects feature. So you should have some links to some pieces of information that are for eating insects or against eating insects, or that are neutral. And I'd like you to pick out a couple of them, maybe one that's for and against, and if you have time, one that's neutral. Try to get a balance of positive and negative. We'll take a little bit of a break, have a look at the links that are provided in the resource material, and note down the main points in 1 or 2 sentences.